Well, Rick Perry intended for yesterday's fundraiser with Hispanic businessmen in Harlem to be kept secret, but the Washington Heights party was crashed by curious Democratic Congressman Charlie Rangel.
I kind of think he's the best thing going for President Obama, but I'm a Democrat. Oh, I guess I'm here for the same reason all of you are here, figuring out why he's here. Isn't that so?
Well, Ben Smith is a senior political reporter for Politico. Alex Wagner is an MSNBC political analyst, and Errol Louis is the political anchor of New York One News and co-editor of Deadline Artists, an anthology of newspaper columns that will be published next week. Sometimes we get the shameless plug out of the way right at the beginning. Welcome all, but I'm going to start with Ben because when I think of New York political moments, I'm thinking nobody's in his element more than Ben Smith. Charlie Rangel popping up with Rick Perry. You were there. You knew Perry was there. Describe the scene.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, outside a restaurant in Washington Heights, perplexed bypassers sort of coming, hearing Perry was there, saying mean things about Perry. This is New York. And then out of his Cadillac pops Charlie Rangel with no staff, marches past the nonplussed Texas Rangers, who are just who are all, also all around in their cowboy boots, and the private security guards, and hangs out in there for half an hour. Perry shows up eventually and has to kind of go in to see Charlie Rangel.
Did the two of them chat?
They did. Rangel said he welcomed him to his district, and he said he was just there to make Rick Perry feel comfortable.
And what did Rick Perry? Do we have any report of what Rick Perry thought of the visit?
He didn't say. Rangel said he was very gracious, as well as tall. That was pretty much all we got from him.
Errol, is this quintessential Charlie Rangel? Is this his way of sort of trying to work his way back into the political establishment? Because he's kind of been in exile from the Democratic community, particularly as far as the White House is concerned.
In New York, at least, Charlie Rangel is the Democratic establishment. 22 terms in office.
Sure.
It's not as if anybody's going to chase him off the stage, especially in his district. One interesting thing, though, it does highlight is that when we talk about Latino politics nationally, mostly people are thinking of Mexican Americans. Yeah. Or if they're thinking of New York, maybe you're thinking Puerto Rican Americans. This was a group of Dominicans, which are a coming political force, not just in New York, but elsewhere. Rick Perry very smartly trying to sort of make some inroads, try to make some contact. Charlie Rangel, of course, there to sort of maybe spit in the punch bowl a little bit.
Yeah, Alex, so it actually brings up, and I want to get to Rick Perry in Israel, but actually, Errol brings up a good point. As the Mitt Romney campaign wants to paint Rick Perry as totally unelectable and a general, that he's just going to blow this and Social Security, he's not going to play in the suburbs. All sorts of comments are making. But when it comes to Hispanics, Perry instinctually seems to be more adept at trying to woo Hispanics than Mitt Romney or any other Republican in this field.
Sure, and some of those same Hispanic businessmen who were at that event said, look, he has pretty progressive policy as far as the children of immigrants, illegal immigrants and otherwise, based on his record in Texas. That's good for Perry supporters. That's good for outreach. He's clearly trying to work that angle.
All right, a couple of polls out. I want all of you guys to help dissect. New South Carolina poll, what caught my eye, Ben Smith, this Winthrop poll, not that Rick Perry's ahead, I think we all expected that, but that Mitt Romney was so close in second place. It almost felt as if in South Carolina there is split as the national Republicans. We have this Gallup poll that shows in a head-to-head it's 49-39. This whole thing feels like we're in the two-person race. Nobody has just informed Michelle Bachmann, Ron Paul, Herman Cain, Rick Santorum, everybody else.
Well, you just did, but
yeah.
I think South Carolina is a bunch of different states when it comes to Republicans. There are kind of more rural Tea Party Republicans. There are sort of more moderate business Republicans there. So some of that is showing up. But I also think, that's a place where Rick Perry was supposed to take it by storm and really ought to be really kind of his natural place. And so, I don't know. You think he ought to be doing a little better, and I think there's a sense in which he hasn't closed the deal.
I was just going to say, and Alex and Errol, one of the things that I've been surprised at with Romney is that he's trying to emphasize Florida and Arizona. He's trying to emphasize states because he's nervous that he can't beat Perry in Iowa and he can't beat him in South Carolina. But does he have to try?
I think so. I mean, look, it's such an unsettled field at this point, and there's a school of thought that says the GOP does not want Mitt Romney to be its nominee, basically anybody but Mitt, which is why they're flocking to Perry, in as much as there's a very conservative wing that says this guy's our guy. Romney has to play strong and have a fair showing, I think, in the months leading up to Florida and Arizona. I mean, any area where he falls out of favor, any area where he doesn't perform well is bad for his campaign.
And Errol, though, she brought up there's an anybody but Romney movement movement, but Romney's trying to create an anybody but Perry movement.
That's exactly right. I think, in fact, I read this poll as Romney sort of solidifying the if you don't want Perry, I'm your guy.
Right.
The shocker for me is that Sarah Palin, who on some level was the protest vote, and she was in double digits
that's
for a
sort of
long
fading
time,
away.
behind Herman Cain.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, three of you, I want you to stick around. We're going to talk a little Ron Suskind in a minute. Trivia time, though. We asked which country's flags are first and last, respectively, in the display of UN member states' flags along First Avenue, New York City. My New York native friends here would have gotten it easily, of course, because the answers are no, it's Afghanistan and Zimbabwe. The flags are placed in English alphabetical order, starting at 48th Street, and they stretch for 6 blocks to 42nd Street. But guess what? Try to find that out today. You'll never be able to get to those streets. We'll be right back. You're watching the Daily Rundown only on MSNBC. Let's bring back our panel. Ben Smith, Alex Wagner, and Errol Louis. All right, the Ron Suskind book, Confidence Men, it's out. He's out now doing the book tour. He was on the Today Show this morning. He was on Morning Joe, having to defend some of his reporting. Here's one thing he said on Morning Joe this morning when it came to Geithner's pushback that everything in here was not the case. Here's what Suskind said.
The White House has real stuff to respond to. They don't want to respond to that, including, Carville says someone needs to be fired. Yeah. Well, a lot of people are saying Geithner's your guy.
It is intriguing that in all of the initial tell-alls coming out of the Obama White House in one form or the other, there is one consistent theme. Geithner is not portrayed well.
Yeah, I think the economy, things are not going well. And so so everybody is looking at these very early decisions made in the first weeks and months and early even before the administration.
And everybody's gone except Geithner.
And a lot
right,
so somebody's left holding the bag, I guess, in a certain way.
Yeah, what do you make of the White House, the aggressive White House pushback on this book of Suskind's?
Well, you know this well, Chuck. The idea, the White House convinced Tim Geithner to stay. Tim Geithner's 1 foot out the door, and they said, no, come and stay. They don't want any upheaval on their economic team. They need to have this guy in place. And they didn't go to the bat. They've been the guys that have been selling Tim Geithner on staying at the White House. So anything that's going to undermine, his position there is something that they are going to push back against.
But there seems to be also a protection that they're trying to do of sort of the larger point of this book, Errol, which paints a picture of a president and an economic team that was either, at best, had no idea how bad it was, or at worst in over their head.
Sure, it makes it seem as if the president's in over his head. They can't allow that impression to take hold with the electorate. The real target here, though, is not Suskind himself, but the Republicans. They want to let it be known that they're tough and that they're going to respond. This is, to me, a message to the Republicans who are running for president that they're not going to have an easy walk.
All right, shameless plug time. Errol, I'll start with you because we get to start it that way. Here's your shameless plug. This is great, a newspaper column anthology. Really fast.
Exactly right.
Like
it's never been done before. The greatest newspaper columns. We're going to have an event on October 1st.
Greatest ones ever written.
At the museum in Washington. We'll be down there. You're invited.
And I'm reading. Alex.
If anybody wants to know what's really happening in the Rick Perry campaign, Sasha Eisenberg iBook, Rick Perry and his eggheads, download it now.
I had him on. I absolutely agree. It's a fascinating read.
Michelle Bachmann says that she became a Republican because Gore Vidal's novel Aaron Burr was so deeply anti-American and that it turned her around on liberals. That is true. It is also a great. She caused me to read it, and it's a great book.
Yeah, there you go. All right, how about that? And my shameless plug is to Fairfield University. You guys, the community last night was great host, fun event. Fairfield Stags, I promise you this, if you make the NCAA tournament, I will pick you to win your first round game, even if you're a 16 seed. That's it for the Daily Rundown. We'll be here in the Big Apple again tomorrow. Senator Dick Durbin will join us. Coming up next on MSNBC, Chris Jansing will speak to former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm about her new book and the current state of the economy. Then at 1 p.m., don't miss Andrew Mitchell Reports. I think we're going to swap seats, and I'll see you on the other side on that. Bye-bye.